أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Welcome to another session of the communication skill series. And today we'll be discussing what we have left in the previous lecture, and that was regarding the nonverbal part of the communication. So let's start. Let me share the screen so that we can have an idea what we'll be discussing today. So this is the chapter that I have extracted from Judith Doyer, the book that we have been following throughout this session. But kindly make um, kindly notice this thing that everything that we have been discussing throughout the lectures are not included in this book. So you have to listen carefully to all the lecture content so that you'll be have so that you'll be have so that you will be able to have a good idea what we are discussing and what are the different contents that we have covered during the lecture series. So let's start. We have discussed that nonverbal communication consists of that part of the message that is not encoded in the form of words. And there are different types of the nonverbal messages as well. And we have discussed this content. So let's move towards the content that we'll be discussing today. And that is analyzing the nonverbal communication. Before we start analyzing the nonverbal communication, let's let's go through the reasons why we should go through the understanding phase of this nonverbal communication and why it is important. So there are certain factors which are basically important to note in the nonverbal communication so that you can take the total message from the communication process. Uh, in order to control the message you are communicating and to decode the emotional states of the others, these are some of the important things that you need to that you need to focus during the communication process. Number one, the few things that are included um, in this understanding phase of the nonverbal communication and why it is important. The very first thing is to show interest. The nonverbal signals are a great way to communicate attentiveness and engagement to those around you. Controlling your posture and eye contact will demonstrate to others that you are interested in what they have to say. Next, the second thing is that to convey these specific meanings. To convey specific meanings, we have to focus on that concept that many words have multiple meanings, and the things that we can say can often be misheard or misinterpreted. So, learning how to complement your words with nonverbal communication can prevent misinterpretation and miscommunication. Next one is to establish a connection. Nonverbal communication is a great way to establish connection and trust. It's no accident that many cultures see some sort of physical gestures like a handshake or a hug as necessary in certain type of personal interactions. Like in Pakistan, and we are having a culture that when we used to sit and when the friends used to sit in Pathan's Zaba, they usually shake hand and they definitely hug. So that's how you can establish a connection. Last one is to demonstrate the authenticity. Your nonverbal communication goes a long way in establishing the authenticity of your feeling to those you are speaking with. Complementing your actual words with different eye contact and confident posture will demonstrate to others that you are giving voice to your true feelings. And these are some of the important things that you need to focus so that you'll be able to interpret the specific meaning that's being conveyed to you, and all of these things are very important for the from the non-communication perspective. Now let's talk about the seven different aspects that we will be discussing regarding the non-verbal communication. In fact, I have added one more. That's the Chronomix, and this book is basically an older version, so many of the things are not being listed in this older version. And I think that the eighth aspect of the non-verbal communication is the Chronomix, that the uses or study of the specific time period. So let's start with the first one. That's the kinetic behavior. The term kinetic behavior uh, has been adopted from the Greek word moment, and it is a technical term for what people call body language. Kinesics includes hand and arm gestures, facial expressions, postures, eye behavior, and movements of the body. Uh, uh, Legs and feet. Kinesics is basically a form of non-verbal communication. To reiterate what I have started, kinesic communication is a technical term for body language that is communication by the utilization of the different parts of the body movements, and we call the study kinetic communication kinesics. And kinetic communication, however, it's not the only non-verbal way of communication with other people. Kinetic communication is one of the many ways we can communicate with the other people non-verbally. Non-verbal communication is one of the processes of conveying messages without writing or uttering certain words. So when you say something or you speak something, your words convey only part of the message. Your gestures, facial expressions, and body postures also influence the message. Kinetic communication is all about what your body is doing when you communicate. It includes communicating using the body as a whole. Uh, in the popular culture, we call this body language. In fact, the founder of the kinesics was an American anthropologist, Ray Birdwhistell. uh, During his research, he wrote many things, and I have extracted a few words from his research. And what he writes is the bird whistle writes that facial expressions, gestures, posture, and walk, and visible arm and body movement are the basic components of the non-verbal part of the communication, more specifically the kinetic part. Bird whistle filmed people in social situations and analyzed them. He showed how humans communicate in a way we had not clearly seen before. He argued that all body movement convey meanings. In fact, he believed that nonverbal behavior had a grammar that we could analyze in similar terms of spoken or written language. Now let's talk about something, the most important aspect, the kinetic communication in the interviews. So, what are the different things that are being observed by the people who are conducting the interview regarding the specific applicants? Interviewers, and other people as well, like police interrogators, they study kinetic communication. They have been trained for it. So they say it. These people who are conducting the interviews or the interrogations, they say that it helps them determine whether people they are interviewing are telling the truth or lying. Law enforcement officers say that the suspects and witnesses involuntarily present telling indicators of deception through body language. They also present indicators of nervousness and receptiveness. According to Birdwhistle, Conasex has become an integral part of the police interrogations. Police interrogations and cooperative interviews use kinetic communication and verbal cues when talking to their interviewees. Apart from helping them determine the veracity of what people are telling them, kinesics help them glean other factors. For example, it helps them determine how keen or hesitant a job applicant is. Like someone is not willing to disclose what he or she has been doing in the past regarding his or her job, then that simply means that the person is reluctant in opening or showing the details, so that he or she might not be as much interested in the job opportunity. So people who work in human resources are trained in many aspects of kinesics. Human resources is the department of a company or organization that hires, trains, and administers its work. So let's move towards uh, the purpose of the five categories of the body movements that's written over here: the definition, the purpose, and the example. And there are different categories. Number one is emblems, illustrators. Number two is illustrators. Number three is effective or feeling displays. Number four is regulators. And number fifth is adopt. So you're required to go through all these five categories so that you'll know the purpose of the five categories of the body movement. They are basically a specific purpose of each and every one of them. Like emblems means to reinforce or replace the words, or the illustrators are being utilized to accentuate or emphasize a word or a phrase. Uh, so you have to go through this table 2.1 so that you'll be having an idea of what the specific purpose is and what the specific definition is. And there's an example as well. You can go through this. So now let's move towards the second part. Second part is the physical characteristics. It would be written over here. So these are the physical characteristics written over here. So physical appearance or the physical characteristics. Uh, the basic concept is our choice of color, clothing, hairstyle, and other factors affecting appearance are also considered as a means of non-verbal communication. according to what people see when they first set their eyes on you. Judgments about your personality and abilities are going to be concluded. In fact, that's not a good way to judge someone, but in fact, it is happening since for the past many years that people are being judged through their physical appearance. Uh, in fact, quality is more important than the quantity, but unfortunately, this thing has been in practice since for a very long time. This really applies here as well. It is really pivotal to dress up properly for any business or job offer that anyone may encounter. One shouldn't focus on wearing too much accessories like jewelry and makeup, because it gives a negative sense that people who took too much time for the preparation may not focus on the specific job or the business. So that's a negative sense. So one should not focus on wearing too much accessories. So why what is very vital in the physical appearance and the proper hairstyle is, there are certain contents which needs to be focused. Number one is body cleanliness, number two is clean nails, number three is shiny shoes, and number four is being appropriately dressed up for this specific occasion. Like there are different dresses and dress codes for different occasions. Like if you're going to a celebration, then the dress code is different, and if you're going to a beach party, then the dress code is totally different. If you're being dressed like for a beach party and you're going to a formal interview, then it would communicate a negative sense. So the acronymically callous reality that exists is that you don't choose your birth, your eye color, the natural color of your hair, or your height, but people spend millions every year trying to change their physical characteristics. uh, you can get colored contact lenses, you can dye your hair, and if you're shorter than you'd like to be, you can buy shoes to raise your stature a couple of inches. You won't be able to change your birth, and no matter how much you stop to appear shorter, you won't change your height until time and age gradually makes it apparent. So if you're too tall, again, you might be having a difficulty to find the correct size pants, or even the length of the mattress would be a challenge for you. But fortunately, there are other rewards. But all of these things convey, but the researchers in the communication, they specifically focus on this part as well. The researchers in their multiple studies have sought out different observations. For example, one of the person was Burnham. um, One of the questionnaires he used to fill out from different people as, have you ever uh, one of the questions that I've extracted from the questionnaire that he used to fill out from different people for the communication research, is that, have you ever heard that taller people get paid more? Yes. Why? And if there is so, then why? And if this is not, then why taller people are being more positive in the communication phase, or negative in the communication phase? Is there uh, any truth to the notion that people prefer symmetrical faces? That is, both the sides of the face should be equal, or non-symmetrical or asymmetrical faces with unequal sides, like crossed nose or having an eye or ear slightly higher than the other. So these are the different questions that the Burnham put to the different people, and he got different answers. But but this is a bitter reality that people are being preferred, although that doesn't make any sense in the communication or the abilities of the person. We often make judgments about person's personality or behavior based on the physical characteristics, and researchers are quick to note that those judgments are often inaccurate. Regardless of your eye color, hair color, or even how tall you are, uh, eh, being comfortable with yourself is an important part of your presentation. If you are having all the physical characteristics that are on the positive side, but you are not uh, comfortable with yourself, and in the interview you didn't perform well, then obviously things will not work out for you. You have to act naturally and consider aspects of your presentation you can control in order to maximize the positive image towards the audience. There are a few things which are not being discussed yet and written over here, the breadth order, like the general attractiveness of a person, and these things are basically included in the physical characteristics. Now let's move towards the next one, that is the touching behavior. The touching behavior has got a specific synonym, and that's haptic. Uh, what we call it, touch in communication interaction is classified as haptics. So touch or haptics have been derived from the ancient Greek word haptikos, and researchers identify five distinct kinds of touch. and obviously I'll not be explaining the last two of its types, and it's not mentioned in this book, that's a Jyotir Doya, and neither I'll be mentioning those, neither I'll be explaining any of those, so you may Google it for your information. Haptic communication is basically the uh, the touching behavior or the touch based communication. Haptic communication is a branch of non-verbal communication that refers to the ways in which people and other living beings communicate and interact via the sense of touch. Even the animals, they also use this specific method of communication. Touch is the most sophisticated and intimate of the five senses. Touch is the earliest sense to develop. Sorry. Touch is the earliest. I've been discussing that touch is the earliest sense to develop in the fetus. For example, the development of an infant's haptic senses and how it relates to the development of the other senses, such as vision, has been the target of many researchers. Human babies have been observed to have enormous difficulty surviving if they don't possess a sense of touch, even if they retain sight and hearing as well. So infants who can perceive through touch, even without sight and hearing, tend to fare much better. They perform better. They act better. They can communicate in a better sense. Like if a child is weeping, and the mother or the father or any one of the relatives and the close relatives on the close or in the close acquaintances, they tend to they tend to put up the child when the child is weeping. The sense of touch that provides the children or the child, a specific child, a sense of security, and the child keeps calm, gets calm immediately. So that's how the sense of touch works. So touch can come in many different forms. Some can promote physical and psychological well-being, whereas uh, a specific, like a warm or loving touch can lead to a positive outcome, while a violent touch can ultimately lead to a negative outcome. The sense of touch allows one to experience different sensations, for example, pleasure, pain, warmth, or cold. One of the most significant aspects of touch is the ability to convey and enhance physical intimacy. The sense of touch is the fundamental component of the haptic communication for interpersonal relationships. Touch can be categorized in many terms, such as positive, like like someone can be in playful mode, and or it could be used to control. Uh, like it can convey some ritualistic meanings, like task related or even unintentional. Touching behavior can be platonic, such as hugging or handshake. It's common in Pakistan, like friends shake hands or hug while they gather for a cup of tea at Pathan's Dhaba. That's quite common. So other behaviors like striking, pushing, pulling, pinching, kicking, strangling, and hand-to-hand fighting are forms of touch or the haptic communication in the sense of in the context of physical abuse, and that's negative way of communication with the touching behavior. Before I can conclude, let's mention the five types of the touching behavior. I've already told you that I'll not be discussing the last of the two types. So I can mention the name for you, but you have to Google it yourself. Number one is the functional or the professional touch, like medical examination by the doctors or the physical therapy. Like if some person is having a broken bone, after a specific 6 weeks or 8 weeks therapy, the person feels better. So the doctor or the nursing staff who is responsible for the therapy, they basically touch the patient at the specific points of pain. So that's the functional or the professional touch. Like a sports coach, they train the specific people with specifically holding certain positions, like how to hold the bat, how to make it straight, something like that. Second one is social or the polite touch. Like the most common example of this thing is handshake. Like the people, when they meet, they tend to handshake, and that's a social or the polite touch. Third one is the friendship or the warmth touch, and the most common example is hug. And all of the second one and third one needs no description, because everything is quite descriptive by the name. The fourth one and the fifth one is the intimacy and the arousal. So you have to search it by yourself. Let's finish this with the conclusion that before take an example. Like before giving any presentation, a person who needs to be interacting with different people, like the person may interact with people by shaking hands and making casual conversations. This interaction can be established, can be used to establish trust before the person takes the stage. While speaking in a public place or the public gathering, we do not often touch people in the audience, but we do interact with visual aids, our note cards and other objects. uh, how we handle them can communicate our comfort level. It's always a good idea to practice using the technology like visual aids or note cards you'll use in your speech during a practice session. Using the technology correctly by clicking the right button on the mouse or pressing the right switch on the overhead projector can contribute to your credibility that you are not nervous, and you are properly attentive towards the audience, and you're providing the exact part of the speech that needs to be delivered to the audience. Next one is paralanguage, and paralanguage is basically the vocal qualities. uh, Speech has non-verbal elements, and whenever it's regarding it's regarding the vocal cord, it's classified as paralanguage. These includes voice quality, emotions that being explained through the pitch and range of the voice quality, and speaking style, rhythm, in intonation and stress. Likewise, written texts have non-verbal elements such as handwriting style and spatial elements of the words. Paralanguage is the exception to the definition of the nonverbal communication. We may recall that nonverbal communication was defined as not involving words, but paralanguage is a unique form of nonverbal communication that exists when we are speaking. We are utilizing the words. Paralanguage involves tone and non-verbal aspects of the speech that influence meaning, including how loudly or softly the someone is speaking, like the intensity or pausing or even a silence. They can convey certain meanings. Like if a teacher is delivering a lecture and certain people are busy talking to each other, then the specific faculty member takes a pause for a while and starts staring at the people who are talking to each other. Then that specific silence that conveys a meaning. And this is basically where this the concept of paralanguage comes in. The silence of the vocal pauses can communicate hesitation as well. It indicates that indicates the need to gather thought or serve as a sign of respect. Sometimes we learn just as much or even more from what a person does not say as what they do say. So example is what I have previously mentioned as a faculty member. So paralanguage is communication through nonverbal words. It comprises of five vocal characteristics, including pitch, volume, the specific rate, uh, quality, and intonation, which can complement or contradict meaning, while vocal interferences can disrupt messages. Number one is pitch, and it's the highness or the lowness of the person's vocal tone. Second one is volume, and volume is the loudness or softness of the person's vocal tone. Third one that I have mentioned is rate, and rate is the speed at which a person speaks. Sometimes people who are in the audience, who are listening to the speaker, they get irritated, or they don't understand because the rate at which the speaker is going on is not being clearly understood by the audience. And this is a common complaint for those people who tend to speak at a faster rate. And quality of the sound is the fourth one, and that's totally related with a person's voice. Fifth one is intonation, is the variety, melody, or the inflection of a person's voice. Last one is vocal interferences, and they are basically extraneous words or sounds that interrupt the fluent speech. So let's conclude last few words. Paralanguage is the study of nonverbal cues of the voice, or various acoustic properties of the speech, such as tone, pitch, and accent, collectively known as prosody. That's the specific word that's being used in general among the researchers regarding the paralanguage. So that can all give off nonverbal cues. Paralanguage may change the meanings of the word. Like if you say a word like some person is a very good person, so this, the way it's being presented, the way it's being spoken out, the 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 intensity and the specific length of the specific word that's being said, that conveys a meaning of a negative sense. One of the profound researchers in the linguistics, namely George Trager, developed a classification regarding the paralanguage, which is categorized as voice qualities, and vocalizations. The first one was voice set. Voice set is the context in which the speaker is speaking. This can include the situation, gender, mood, age, and person's culture. Whereas the second one is the voice qualities are volume, pitch, tempo, rhythm, articulation, resonance, nasality, and accent as well. So they give each individual a unique print. Whereas the last one is vocalization. Vocalization consists of three subsections. That's the characterizers, qualifiers, and segregates. I have already mentioned all those things that the content that I have been discussing through the lecture series, all of the content is not available in the book. So you have to go through the entire lecture to extract out all these things. And all those things that have been a part of this lecture, they are equally important from every aspect, from practical aspect as well, and from the examinations perspective as well. So uh, characterizers are emotions that's being expressed while speaking, such as laughing, crying, or yawning. Whereas the second subsection of the vocalization is a qualifier, and that's the style of delivering a message. For example, yelling, "Hey, stop that," or you can say that something like that, as opposed to whispering. These are the qualifiers which add certain meaning to the paralanguage part of the non-verbal communication. Last one of the vocalization is the vocal segregates, such as carry on, yeah, oh, okay. So these are some of the few words that are being represented or repeated to the speaker, so that he or she may continue. That tells the speaker that the listener is actually listening to them, so that they can carry forward. So let's finish off this thing, and now let's move towards the next one. That's the proximity, or the specific utilization of the space. Proximity is basically the closeness or the utilization of the personal space. That the concept is utilization of space. So it is another important part of the non-verbal communication, and it's regarding the spatial usage, and which is the non-verbal communication through the use of space and objects around us. Like if certain people are nervous at certain times, like if a person is being called out by the senior, and he or she asks the person that you have been coding this part of the job today, and you haven't completed, or you have put this thing wrong. So the person starts playing with an object on the table, and that simply shows the nervousness of the people. So this is the utilization of the specific artifact that's being placed on the table. So that will be the discussion. Artifacts will be the discussion of the next phase within the same this current lecture. So personal space is the space around the place or a person occupied at a given time. And proxemics is the study of the personal space. Proxemics is the study of perception and structuring of the interpersonal and environmental space, whereas acoustic space is the area over which one's voice or music can be heard. That's acoustic space. And the third one, the last one, the concept is territory, and territory is a space over which a specific person claims ownership, and this changes on. The territory of the person changes when, like if you are in office, your territory is a specific cabin that's being allocated to you for the workplace. Whereas if you come home, you are basically more confined to a specific a smaller place, or if you have been allocated a specific room, then you have got a larger space to enjoy. So let's talk about the researchers, what they have extracted regarding this thing. The most important one, or you can say the influential one, was the Edward T. Hall. That's the cultural anthropologist who coined the proximity term in 1963. Yes, many decades back. So he defines the proxemics as the interrelated observations and theories of human usage of space as a specialized elaboration of the culture. So in his foundation work on proxemics, names the hidden dimension, the Hall emphasized that the impact of proxemic behavior, that's the usage of space, on interpersonal communication, it's very important. According to Hall, the study of the proxemics is valuable in evaluating not only the way people interact with others in daily life, but also the organization of space in their houses and buildings, and ultimately the layout of their towns. So proxemics remain a hidden component of interpersonal communication that's uncovered through observations and is strongly influenced by the culture. So when we discuss space in the non-verbal context, we mean the space between objects and people. Space is often associated with social rank and is an important part of the business communication. Who gets the corner office, like something like that. So why is the head of the table important, and who gets to sit there, like the head of the family or the father, usually, or the grandfather usually used to sit in the place of the head table place. The people from diverse cultures may have different normative space expectations. If you are from a large urban area, having people stand close to you may be a normal thing for you. But if you're from a rural area or a culture where people expect more space, someone may be standing too close for comfort and you don't know it. Like like it would be a irritating factor for you that the person is standing too close to me, because the person from the city is is quite is quite used to at standing at a place close to the other one, whereas this thing is not applicable for those people who are coming from the rural areas where large space is being allocated to everyone. uh, Territory is related to the control, whereas territory is related to the control, definitely. As It's a way of establishing control over your own room. Maybe you painted it with your favorite color, or put up posters that represent your interest, or things you consider unique about yourself. Families or household often mark their space by putting up fences or walls around their houses. This sense of right to control your space is an implicit in territory. Territory means the space you claim as your own, are responsible for, or are willing to defend. It's also common with the wild animals as well. Like lions, they usually they mark up their specific boundaries, their specific areas, and they defend it until until they are until their death. So these are something that basically territorial communication, that's basically important aspect, and that's part of this proxemics or the proximity thing. Among most humans, there's a basic need for personal space, but the normative expectations for a space vary greatly by culture. Like from where you stand in an aerobics class in relation to the others, whereas to where you will like to place your book bag in your classroom, or your personal expectation of space are often at variance with others, with respect to the culture, with respect to different time, and that's basically the part of the chronomics. It will be discussed shortly. So, in the same way, there are cultural contexts and expectations of nonverbal behavior. Public speaking also happens in contexts. Uh, there are different cultures around the globe, and they are definitely having different practices. Like in North America, eye contact with the audience is expected. Like big movements and gestures are not generally expected and can be distracting. The speaker occupies a space on the stage, even if it's not in the front of the audience. When you occupy that space, the audience will expect to behave in certain ways. If you talk to the screen behind you while you are displaying your presentation, a PowerPoint presentation, the audience may perceive that you are not paying attention to them. Speakers are expected to pay attention. Sorry for that. I was saying that speakers are expected to pay attention to and interact with the audience, even if in the feedback is primarily nonverbal. Uh, the speaker's movements should coordinate with the tone, rhythm, and the content of the speech. Pacing back and forth, keeping your hands in your pockets, or crossing your arms may communicate nervousness or even defensiveness and detract from your message. So these are some of the things that we usually discuss in this part of the proximity or the utilization of the space. So it is the part of the communication, non-verbal communication. Now let's move further. Uh, Next one is the artifacts. So what artifacts are? Artifacts are basically specific objects that are being used to convey certain meanings. Like in order to acquire a more precise understanding of the artifactual communication, uh, let's start to define or discuss this thing. uh, Communication by itself is supposed to be a social process in which individuals employ symbols to establish and interpret meanings in the environment. This is basically these are basically the concept that I've extracted from certain researchers, and those were West. I don't remember the actual name of the person. Something like West and Turner. So in 2010, they have provided these words, similar to these words in their specific research. So although an artifact does employ linguistic symbols innate in their social construct, artifacts are more than a linguistic code. They are an aesthetic code. Furthermore, symbols are arbitrary labels or representations of the phenomena, while an artifact is the concrete existence of that specific or those phenomena. So, artifactual communication then is the aesthetic coding and decoding of those phenomena. The coding and decoding is subjectively interpreted with the culture in mind in order to establish a cautious generalization. Like in America, in Europe, and in other parts of the world, European culture, uh, the law enforcement people like policemen and other people are being given extraordinary weight. They have been they've got great part of the respect, whereas in the Indo-Pak subcontinent, the respect phase is missing with the law enforcement agency people, like the policemen or certain other similar type of people. So artifacts are the interpretation of this meaning. These are basically the approximations and are never absolute representations. So, for all intents and purpose, objects, body modifications, color, and environments make up criteria that may constitute artifacts. Like a nursing uniform is based on white color, and if there is a person like he or she may wear white uniform, and the person is being placed in in an hospital, that simply means that the person is being serving the humanity, or the person is being placed there for 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 support of the doctoral staff. So human beings are able to make general inferences based on the artifacts that human use to adorn themselves. Artifacts are all components of an environment that can affect the communicative atmosphere. A person's field of experience will shape individuals' knowledge of artifactual communication and how they interpret artifacts. Artifactual communication, like any other form of the communication, is transactional and exists between senders and receivers. The That send certain messages based on stimuli in communication episode. uh, Artifactual communication is dynamic and ongoing, and can be built upon and expanded with each experience or encounter with an individual. Not only may artifacts create implications of self, but they play an intricate role in the environments. Findings in a form of formal research confirm that adding or subtracting artifacts from oneself is an or in a specific arrangement of the environment often has a direct effect on the perception of oneself. Like if there is an ambulance and that's going on the road, and that's hooter is being switched on, so that simply means that the that the ambulance is in emergency situation, and the person needs to be rushed towards the specific location that he or she wants to go. So artifacts are the form of decorative ornamentations that are chosen to represent self concept. They can include rings or identification badges being used by the servicemen, like the FI or CIA. You have already seen in a specific in certain movies that the person shows a specific badge, and um, uh, there's a certain specific incident or the accident on the road or the super highway, and the person comes in with a nice suit and shows a specific badge, and the people they usually set aside so that the person may get a direct access to the location what the incident has happened. So artifacts may also include brand names and logos as well. Even an ambulance, like I have mentioned before, is a form of artifact that communicates that there is an emergency situation. If the headlights are on and the siren is being hooted, that simply means that the uh, ambulance is an emergency, and the people needs to provide way to the ambulance. From clothes to cars, watches, briefcases, purses, or even eyeglasses, what we choose to surround ourselves communicate something about our sense of self, oneself. So they may project gender, a specific role or position, class or status, personality or group membership, or any affiliation, if any. So, paying attention to a customer's artifacts can give you a sense of the self they want to communicate and may allow you to more accurately adapt your message to meet their specific needs. Like if someone is having an iPhone in the hand, that person will not go to buy a cheaper socks, pair of socks. So you need to have you need to show that specific person directly what category or what type of specific thing that he or she needs. So let's conclude this thing, and now let's move towards the next one. And next one is environmental factors. Again, one of the important factors that needs to be addressed in the nonverbal part of the communication. Environment involves the physical and psychological aspects of the communication context. Uh, More than the tables and chairs in an office, it includes more than physical arrangements in the office working atmosphere, like there's light lumens in a specific office cubicle, or atmospheric warmth, or the chillness of an air conditioner in an office arrangement. Environment is an important part of the dynamic communication process. The perception of one's environment influences one's reaction to it. For example, Google is very famous for its work environment, with the spaces created for physical activity or even in-house food service around the clock. Around the clock. So this expense is no doubt considerable, but Google's action speaks volumes. The results produced in that specific environment that is designated or designed to facilitate creativity, interaction, and collaboration are worth the effort. Google is one of the best places that are extracting extraordinary amount of effectiveness from their employees. So environmental communication is the dissemination of the information and the implementation of the communication practices that are related to the environment. uh, in the beginning, environmental communication was a narrow area of communication. However, nowadays it is a broad field that includes research and practices regarding how different actors like institutions or the different states or different people interact with regard to topics related to the environment, and how cultural products influence society towards environmental issues. So, environmental communication also includes human interaction with the environment. This includes a wide range of possible interactions, from interpersonal communication and vital communities to participatory decision making and environmental media coverage. Some of the aspects. So, let's conclude this thing. So, this is something regarding the environmental factors, and let's talk about the Chronomix. As much I remember, we have concluded all these things: body movement, that's the kinetic behavior; physical characteristics, touching behavior, or the haptic behavior; vocal quality, or the paralanguage; proximity, or the proxemics; artifact, artifacts, and the environment. Now let's talk about Chronomix. uh, like we usually say something like that. Do you know what time it is? How aware you are of the time that varies by culture and normative expectations of adherence or ignorance? Some people and communities and cultures, they represent very time oriented. Like for example, the Euro railway trains in Germany, they are famous for departing and arriving according to a specific schedule. They always arrive in time. They always depart at time. So 8 means 8, 8:30 means 8:30, and 8:45 means 8:45. Not a single minute. Not a single minute. They don't delay. In contrast, if you take the train and the other part of the country, other part of the world, like so somewhere in Argentina, you'll find that the schedule is more of an approximation of what the train will leave or arrive. And there's common saying that time is money, and across many cultures people used to say that time is money. It reveals a high value of time in social context. It often reveals social status or power. uh, who you are willing to wait for. Like, would you like to wait for a doctor at his or her office, or like a potential employee would wait for an interview. like he or she would like to wait for an hour, more than that, even more than that. Your significant other or the children, or sometimes you get impatient, and our impatience underscores our value of time. So that specifically depends upon the preference of a specific person, and that's regarding the Chronomix, and that's the non-verbal part of the communication. So when you give a presentation, does your audience have to wait for you? Time is the relevant factor of the communication process in your speech. The best way to show your audience respect is to honor the time expectation associated with your speech. Always try to stop speaking before the audience stops listening. If the audience perceive that you are gone over time, they will be less willing to listen. This in turn will have a negative impact on your ability to communicate your message. Suppose you're presenting a speech that has three main points. Your audience expect you to regulate that the time and attention to each point. But if you spend all your time explaining on the first part or the first 2 points of the speech and rush through the third one, your speech won't be will not be a balanced one, and you'll lose the rhythm. The speaker occupies a position of some power, but it is the audience that gives him or her that specific position. So by displaying respect and maintaining a balance, you will move through your points more effectively, and that is an effective way of communication. So Chronomix is the study of how we refer and perceive time. So when you order a meal at the fast food restaurant, what your expectations are, for how long will you have to wait for it? Like when you in contrast to that, when you order a pizza online for delivery, when do you expect it will arrive? And let's talk about the third thing. If let's suppose if you order cable service for your home, when do you expect it might be delivered or installed at your house? In the first case, you might measure that the delivery of the uh, of whatever you have ordered in a restaurant is just a matter of few minutes, or perhaps in the second case, perhaps it would be a matter of 30 minutes, like pizza delivery. It would be delivered to your house. But you may measure the time from your order to working cable in days or even weeks. You may even have to be at your home from the work at the working hours of the or at the working hours, like something like 9 to 5. If the company is having a physical office, and the company follows the 9 to 5 timing, then you have to be at your home. You have to make sure that someone is present at your home, either yourself or someone should be placed at your home from 9 to 5, so that when the cable person arrives, the person should be properly attended and the cable gets installed in the house. The expectations vary by context, and we often grow frustrated in a time sensitive culture when the delivery does not match our expectations. uh, in the same way, how long should it take to respond to a customer's request for assistance or information? If they call on the phone, how long should they be on hold? How soon should they expect a response to an email? As a skilled business communicator, you will know to anticipate normative expectations and do your best to meet those expectations more quickly than the anticipated time. Your prompt reply or offer of help in response to a request, even if you cannot solve the issue on the spot, is often generally regarded as positive way of talking or communication with a positive sense, or contributing to the formation of positive communication interactions. Across the cultures, the value of time may vary. There's a very popular example about some Mexican American friends that you may like uh, something like that. It's a popular culture over there and Mexican American environment, that when they usually invite you to a barbecue at 8 p.m., but when you arrive, you arrive at 8 p.m. at their specific place where they have invited you. You usually are the very first person or the very first guest who arrive there, because it is understood that the gathering actually doesn't start at 9 p.m. Same is the case applicable with the Pakistani wedding and parties. So whereas if you're talking about the other parts of the world, like in Sweden, 8 p.m. means 8 p.m., and latecomers are not welcomed. So some Native Americans, particularly elders, speak in well measured phrases and take long pauses between phrases. They do not hurry uh, in delivering their speech or compete for their turn, knowing no one will interrupt them. People around the world have different ways of expressing value of time. So this is this part of the communication where the time is being considered important is the chronomics, or the time based or non-verbal part of the communication. Like in the offices, like if a boss say that, gentlemen, it's 5 p.m., that makes no difference, we have got a very important task at hand and you have to work for it. So usually what happens, those people who are in the audience, they lower their listening level. So this is non-effective way of communication, and that's a non-verbal part of the communication. So let's conclude this thing. There are different tips for understanding the non-verbal communication. Let's discuss those and let's conclude the session. So in everyday life, there are many scenarios where an understanding of non-verbal communication can be used to your advantage. Knowing how to decode non-verbal cues can improve your communication skills in many ways. So some of the content that you need to consider for understanding the nonverbal communication is: look for inconsistencies. Knowing how to spot signs of nervousness like fidgeting or evasive eyes is a great way to determine whether the person you are speaking with is trustworthy or not. If nonverbal behavior seems to run counter to the verbal messaging, it's likely that the speaker is not entirely comfortable with what they are saying. So, next one is you have to be conscious regarding the cultural differences, uh, because of the cultural differences, the meaning may vary. So it's important to be aware of the different mannerisms and physical gestures that are common in different cultures. Non-verbal interpersonal communication varies around the world. Don't rush into judging the non-verbal cues you are picking up from someone from a very different culture or a country, as they may cannot something entirely different in their culture. So you have to focus from where the person is. So if someone is, let's suppose, from the other part of the country, other part of the world, or some country that's far apart, they've got a different culture, they've got different lifestyle, and they behave totally differently. That doesn't mean that what they're saying is not correct. Last one is observe nonverbal signals holistically. It's important to observe a variety of nonverbal cues that are being communicated to you. Just because someone has a sweaty brow doesn't mean they are nervous. Similarly, a twitch in someone's hand may just be an unconscious tick. Try to view nonverbal signals holistically in order to get a fuller picture of what a person is communicating. So let's conclude this session, and that's the nonverbal communication concluded.